Good morning. Good morning. I'm Kenneth Adams, President and CEO of Empire State Development, New York State's Economic Development Agency. Thank you all very much for joining us today for the Global New York Summit. Now, before we get started, please join me in acknowledging some special guests that are with us this morning. First, and really our host, the Governor of the State of New York, Andrew Cuomo. Next, John Mack, Special Advisor to the Board of Empire State Development and Senior Advisor, former Chairman and CEO of Morgan Stanley. We're joined by some elected officials from the legislature in Albany. Special recognition and thanks to Assemblyman Alec Brooke Krasny and to his colleague in the Assembly, the Honorable Donna Lupardo. I also want to recognize, and I hope you'll join me, in recognizing the co-chairs of our 10 regional economic development councils from all across the state who've come here today. Also, a special thank you to many business leaders who've taken time out of their busy schedules and are going to be speaking on our panels this morning. And a very special welcome to the representatives from the many foreign consulates who are here with us this morning. Governor Andrew Cuomo created the Global New York Initiative to help New York State companies export their products and services to markets outside the U.S. and to increase foreign direct investment in New York State. Through a package of exciting new programs that you're going to hear about this morning, New York State is renewing and strengthening our commitment to helping companies develop strategic partnerships with trade partners abroad in both established and emerging markets. While New York's longtime leadership among U.S. states in global trade and investment has been significant, it is worth noting that our success has always started with smaller businesses. Consider this. In 2011, a total of about 41,000 companies exported goods from New York. Now, of those, 94% were small and medium-sized firms employing 500 employees or fewer. In fact, small and medium-sized firms generated over half, about 60%, of New York's total merchandise exports in 2011. And as the governor frequently reminds us, this is all about the jobs. So consider that New York State employment related to exports last year totaled nearly 700,000 jobs. That's right, about 414,000 jobs supported by merchandise exports and 270,000 jobs supported by service exports. 700,000 jobs, think about that, that's almost 10% of the private sector jobs in the state of New York. Global New York will leverage state investments and programs launched by Governor Cuomo over the last 4 years, such as the Regional Economic Development Councils and the Startup New York program. And you're going to hear about both of these initiatives later on in the program. With the launch of Global New York today, the international business community will have the opportunity to see our products, learn about our services, meet our best and brightest, and explore our diverse regions all across New York. We are delighted that you have joined us today to celebrate and accelerate New York State's position in the global economy. Thank you. Now, let's take a look at a special video.
There's something new in New York State. It's a valuable resource for both foreign investors looking for new opportunities and for local businesses looking to expand in a global market.
The mere existence of Global New York is already a strong signal that New York State wants to reach out to companies from abroad and ask them to do business based here but serving the world.
Whether you're already a New York business or looking to become one, now New York State is an even better place to do business.
New York really works for us because it is this mix of high tech, of entrepreneurship, and of creativity and design.
Now more than ever before, New York State welcomes the world. As the 16th largest economy in the world, nobody offers more opportunities in more places to help you succeed. Which is why more Fortune 500 companies all across New York State call New York their home. And with global New York offices all around the world, there's always someone right there with you and working for you.
New York is a great state to do business because we have a partner in the government where we can develop things like this great power electronics consortia. We're looking forward to the same goals of bringing down costs and making things more available to our customers around the world.
New York also offers the best universities, the most advanced academic research and investment, and one of the most diverse and highly trained workforces in the world.
We're lucky that New York State has such a large concentration of high-tech degrees.
The educational institutions in the area are very important to us because we do hire from people that have graduates from local programs.
But New York State gives you more than just brain power. There's also energy power, transportation power, and market power.
There is everything you need in New York State. Great infrastructure, great resources, great industry.
We've got international airports, an international train system.
Everything from the university system, the transportation systems, the Port of Albany.
And we give you more ways to succeed with extensive targeted assistance programs, highly trained specialized professionals, and the technical and marketing expertise you're looking for at no cost to you.
They are here with us a lot. We walk hand in hand for a lot of these grants that we were needed to be successful here in the area.
And New York State now offers one program no other state offers, Startup NY, with no taxes for 10 years for qualified businesses that create new jobs here.
New York is committed to bring the new businesses to the state, and Startup New York is one example.
And of course, only New York State offers the culture, entertainment, and recreation you can't find elsewhere.
I have to compete globally to bring skilled labor into GE, and being able to offer the advantages of the Adirondacks, of the metropolitan area of New York City, of the beauty in the Capital District area is the only reason why I can hire the best world's talent in my domain.
The world is coming to New York. It starts right here today. Global New York.
I think if we make it as easy as possible to compete, then the best will come out for everybody.
The mere fact that they have it and that they deliberately say it is a program to go global and attract businesses that from here serve the world is already a strong signal. Dare I say it, for many foreigners, the US are still resting a little on their laurels and the size of their domestic market. And this program shows that New York State is not, that it is reaching out to the world and attracting foreign investment, and this is exactly the way forward.
I'm Dan Rather. Welcome to Global NY. Welcome to the State of Opportunity.
Thank you. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker to all of you this morning, Ulla Bach. After a career as an accomplished lawyer in Denmark, Ulla and her husband, Peter, became serial entrepreneurs, devoted to socially responsible business development. And their most recent initiative involves manufacturing low-cost tablet devices for educational purposes. This new venture is part of Governor Cuomo's Startup New York program, and the company Ulla will describe is set up recently in Buffalo. Please join me in welcoming Ulla Bach, the president of Bach USA.
Thank you, Kenneth, for your nice words, and good morning to everybody. As you heard, I'm Ulla Bach. I'm the co-founder and the president of Bach USA, a company that is producing PC tablets. And we're doing that in order to deliver education to the underserved world. It is simply a tool. It's not a gadget. It's a tool to improve the educational situation in parts of the world where young students or young kids would have no way to compete with at least our spoiled kids in our home in Buffalo. So if This company was built by our family. My husband, JP, who is sitting here in the audience, he's the chairman of the company, and after long discussions, I became the president. But we started out many years ago in Copenhagen. We are both lawyers, and at some point we got the vision to build or form BARC USA, but there's a long way from a vision to reality. So we needed a home for our new little baby. Our kids have grown up, but we felt we're not too old. We're not old enough to just do nothing. So we looked around in many states in the United States to find a place, and those localities were not really satisfying for us. We needed a place where we could do the manufacturing. We needed a place where we had access to research and development, and we needed access to good and solid workforce. Well, nevertheless, one day we were lucky, and the state of New York captured our attention. And as you, of course, already have guessed, the Startup New York program made the entire difference. The financial landscape of that program is beyond description. It is a bold testament and a bold statement to all investors internationally and nationally in the United States. Come to New York, we are open for business. It is a program with financial incentives like tax exemption, all kind of support for the daily operation of the business, and it is exactly what a startup like ours, which is in the technological area, needs, because our biggest competitor, as you all know, is China. They have low wages, they have low everything, and if we should make a profitable business in United States, we need support. This support will, in the end, benefit the society, because at the same time, we will create a lot of jobs. But the financial part of this program, the state's visionary leader, Cuomo, has created, is not the only important thing. What we look upon as equally important is our attachment, our connection to the local university, Buffalo University. We need, as a technology business, access to research and development. But being a startup, the penny is really, important. So we cannot make a big research department as Qualcomm, for example, can do. Not yet, at least. We hope we can one day. So University of Buffalo is one of our sponsors, and that is one of the conditions for us to get into the program, that we can find a university that will sponsor us. And they have, with big and huge grace, sponsored our venture. We have already benefited from this cooperation with University of Buffalo. They have provided us with 2 top qualified engineers and production managers, which I believe we couldn't have got otherwise. We are on the path to employ 120 people over the next 12 months. Those guys will produce around 30,000 tablets per month. And this is just the beginning of our growth, and you never know where this will end, obviously. When you look at a government, I believe that many of us can say government equals bureaucracy equals waste of time. And with this little murmur in the audience, I think some of you at least agree with me. But even if I'm not campaigning for Governor Cuomo, maybe I should, but I'm not. This has been an unbelievable ride, fast ride. We literally submitted our application at the end of May. Last week of May, we were approved. The last week of July, we had been through all the legal intricacies. We have got unbelievable help. If we had a problem in the morning, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we had a solution. It was a constructive solution. It was not like the bureaucratic nitty-gritty, there is a comma here, a period there, we cannot do it because we have also other things to think about. It was a fast train that was leaving the station. Hence, I have no doubt or no hesitation in saying that New York is open for business. If I had given this speech in Scandinavia, I would end this speech by saying, you, Governor Cuomo, you deserve a big bear hug. But I'm in the United States, I have to be careful. So instead, I'll introduce Governor Cuomo and say to the audience, it is truly my huge privilege, a great honor for me to introduce the 56th Governor of the United States.
I would have taken the bear hug myself. Good morning to all of you. First, Ulla Bach, thank you very much for that kind introduction. It was very well said, and I think it captured the essence of what today is all about. And also, thank you for what you do, and the product that you do, and the intent that you have behind your company. Ulla Bach, let's give her a round of applause. To Ken Adams, who's doing a really extraordinary job, and the whole team at the ESDC, let's give them a round of applause. Chancellor Nancy Zimfer is here today, who is the head of the SUNY system, State University system, and our SUNY system, our higher education system, is at the core of our economic development efforts. We've made that marriage. It's a pleasure to welcome her. Let's give her a round of applause. I never claimed to be an economic development genius, but I have two economic development geniuses who have been very, very helpful to me, besides the team at ESDC, Dr. Elaine Calleros and John Mack, both of whom are here. Please, gentlemen, stand up and let us thank you. And we have members of the legislature. Assemblywoman Donna Lapardo is here, and Assemblyman Alex Brooke-Krasny have been introduced, but please stand and let us welcome you again. I asked them to stand a second time because they are friends of mine, and I like them, and I want to be nice. Plus, the program I'm going to be speaking about today, I have to present to the legislature in January, and I need them to pass it. So it's personal affection meets pragmatism when it comes to the legislature. Pleasure to be with all of you. I'm very excited about today, and I don't want to take long. I want you to get to work. We have representatives from 30 countries here today. So a big part of today is taking the time for you to meet each other and for you to network and make connections, because that's a lot of what this is all about. A couple of points just to set the stage for where we are. We started with the state of New York 4 years ago, really on this track. The expression New York open for business, because 4 years ago, New York was not open for business, hence the slogan. And it wasn't a conscious effort on the state's behalf. It just grew over time. But we arrived at a point where I can't tell you how many business people would say to me on a daily basis, I just can't do business in New York anymore. It's too expensive, the taxes are too high, the attitude is counterproductive. Ulla's point about the bureaucracy was exactly true in New York. The bureaucracy was impossible, and they made it difficult. They were putting up roadblocks. It's almost as if they were working against the businesses. And then you had very high taxes, one of the most expensive places on the planet to do business. And you put those two things together, and it had a very negative effect on the economy. Now, New York didn't intentionally do it, but it was slowly by evolution. I call it the hangover arrogance effect. You know, at one time, state of New York believed they were the state of New York, and businesses had to be here, and people had to be here. Where else could you be? Who could leave New York? You know, that was the New York attitude. They accused us of arrogance at one point in our lives, and that was true. New York was the center of the universe, and of course you wanted to be here because we're the center of the universe, and there really was no realistic option for you anyway. So we could torture businesses because you have no other place to go. That was not technically true. If you look at a map, there are other places in the United States. If you look west of New York, you see all these other shapes. Those are actually other states, and they are habitable. They're not New York, but they are habitable. And what we found in New York was people were becoming more and more mobile. And if you continue to increase taxes, and if you continue to make situations difficult for business, they could move to one of those other shapes on the map. And it was a little shocking to us as New Yorkers, but we eventually realized that. And we spent the past 4 years recalibrating. And we took a long, hard look in the mirror, and we said we have to make some fundamental changes. And we did make some fundamental changes, starting with bringing down the cost of doing business in the state of New York. Government learned a new and very exciting innovation called arithmetic. And the arithmetic said that you can't continue to raise taxes the way we were raising taxes. In the state of New York, over the past 50 years, the rate that taxes went up exceeded the rate of growth in income, okay? So the government was spending at a higher rate than the people in the state were making money. So by definition, the state was taking more and more in taxes from the residents of the state. The size of the government was out of control. And we went through 4 years where we recalibrated. We brought down the size of government to the smallest level now in 50 years. We have the lowest rate of spending since they've been keeping numbers in the state of New York. And bringing down the expenses allowed us to reduce the taxes. We've reduced the taxes across the board. Everybody in this room pays lower taxes today than they did 4 years ago. Middle class, up to $300,000. We have the lowest tax rate since 1953. Lowest corporate tax rate since 1968. Lowest manufacturing tax rate since 1917. So taxes come way down. We then put together with that a concept called entrepreneurial government. Entrepreneurial government. People said, you can't say that, that's an oxymoron. I said, it doesn't have to be an oxymoron. Why? Because the fundamental role for government should be to develop the economy. Why? Because if the economy is running, that's the best thing I can do as governor of the state for the state. If jobs are coming in, people have opportunity. If businesses are coming in, you're stimulating the economy, that's a tax base. And if we're generating revenues and a tax base, that's good for local governments, et cetera. So the best thing I can do is be a de facto head of the Chamber of Commerce, bringing in businesses, generating jobs. And we came to that recognition. We put a very big emphasis on first remedying the problems that we had, the taxes, the regulations, and then taking a very affirmative role in actually working with businesses to generate new businesses. We don't have one state of New York. We're not one competitive market. We have 10 different regions. And each region is basically a market and a business center unto itself. Foreigners think, well, we're going to deal with New York, or you mean New York City. No, I don't mean New York City. I mean New York State. You know New York City, you know New York City's product, you know the market of New York City. But we have 9 other regions, all with their own personality, their own characteristics, their own business line, and their own products. And they are competitive in and of their own right. And we want you to meet those other 9 also. We call them regional economic development councils that have been developing business plans for those regions. And they're sophisticated and they're highly competitive and they're here today. So we want relations with New York City and we want to develop relations with the other regions also. And the government is in full partnership with those regions, helping them develop as quickly and best as we can. The Startup Project, which you heard from Ula, is the epitome of all of it. Startup zones are frighteningly simple, should have been done a long time ago, and change the competitive field 180 degrees. Startup zones are geographic zones, several square miles about, centered with a university, usually a public university, a state university, sometimes a private university, and they are tax-free zones for 10 years. Meaning what? Meaning exactly what I said. Tax-free zones for 10 years. Well, it can't be that simple. What's the catch? This is the catch. They have to be new jobs. They can't be existing jobs that move into the zone, but they just have to be a new job. So an existing company that starts new jobs in that zone, tax-free. Company from the outside that wants to move in, tax-free. Foreign company that wants to move into that zone, tax-free. No income tax, no property tax, no sales tax for 10 years. Which means any company goes to their accountant and says, I want to locate in the United States of America. Tell me the least expensive place to locate in the United States. The answer is a startup zone. Well, how about a no-tax zone? These areas are actually cheaper than a no-income tax state. Why? Because a no-income tax state still has some taxes. A state needs revenue. So they have no income tax, but they have a very high property tax, or they have a very high value-added tax. These are truly tax-free zones. The rationale from the state's point of view is these are areas where we want to generate an economy. They're primarily in upstate. They're always surrounded next to a university center. But they're also in New York City. They're also on Long Island. And the dispute we had with the legislature, not that we had a dispute, let me take that word back. It was a discussion that we had. It was an exchange of ideas. But some in the legislature said, well, we're giving up the revenue from those jobs because they would have paid state taxes. And my point was, you're giving up nothing because you wouldn't have had those jobs but for the startup zone. And even if we're giving up the state taxes, they're still generating economic activity in that region because people are buying homes and they're buying groceries and the kids are going to school and they're playing Little League. So they're generating economic opportunity in that area, and that is enough. When you put all of the assets of the state of New York, all the culture, the schools, the geography, everything you saw in that video, and you put it with a no-tax environment, that has to be a winning combination. That has to be a winning combination. You get all those assets, and you're not paying taxes. And it is working. And we've seen the difference already in the past 4 years. Over the past 4 years, we went from a $10 billion deficit to a $4 billion surplus. We went from 800,000 unemployed to 500,000 new jobs. We now have 7.4 million private sector jobs in this state, more jobs than have ever existed before in the history of the state of New York. We're number 2 in job creation since the recession, and we're not going to stop until we're number 1 in job creation after the recession. So we feel the momentum changing already. Today is about going to phase 2. And phase 2 is what I'm going to be speaking to the legislature about in January, which is what? Which is now opening new markets to the state. We believe we did what we had to do to get our state competitive, and we are competitive, and we believe we're highly competitive, and we believe we are as competitive as any state in this nation. Now phase 2 is new markets, and the new markets are international markets, and they are global markets. And that's what this launches today. And that's what we're now going to aggressively foster. ESDC has tremendous capacity at an international global marketing. We're very excited about the websites and the online approaches that we have. We're going to be organizing a series of trade missions that I'm going to be going on over the next couple of years. We're going to start with 5: Canada, Mexico, Israel, China, and Italy. Why Italy? Because I want to go to Italy, basically, is why Italy. We're going to have an official state rationale, but, you know, that's what that is. And then I'm very excited. When I was in the federal government, I worked with the Export-Import Bank, what they call the Ex-Im Bank. And the Ex-Im Bank is a great vehicle. The Ex-Im Bank finances loans, grants for companies that want to develop the capacity to market overseas, or for foreign companies that want to come to the United States and come to the state of New York. And the Export-Import Bank can finance both, with both loans and grants, companies going overseas and overseas companies coming to the state of New York. New York is going to be the first state in the nation that forms its own Ex-Im Bank, and we're going to capitalize it with $35 million to start. So we'll have a real vehicle that can facilitate companies that want to make exactly this transaction. And I'm excited about that, because I do believe we have the product. I believe we are competitive, and opening up those global markets is now the next step for us. And in some ways, it's New York coming full circle. When you look at the state seal of the great state of New York, which is on the front of this podium, if you had superb vision, and you could see what is in the middle of that seal, the center of the seal of the state, is the Hudson River. And on the Hudson River, there are two sailing vessels. One sailing vessel is smaller mast, fewer sails. One is a larger sailing ship with larger sails. And they were there to symbolize commerce for the state of New York. And the center of the state was commerce. Two sailing vessels, the smaller one for intrastate commerce, the larger sailing boat for international commerce, the ability to cross oceans. At the center of who we are as in New York was a trading seaport. That's what we were. That's what made New York, New York. And that is still what makes New York, New York. We are the center for international ideas and commerce. We are an international marketplace. And the best of everything in every field comes to New York. And that's what generates the dynamism and the energy that is New York at its essence. And that's what can't be duplicated. What does New York have? It's an energy that you feel, it's a sensation, it's an emotion, it's an effect, as much as it is any one product. And today, in this international dynamic, with the world getting smaller and smaller on every level, having that focus and being that the locus of the international dynamic and the international marketplace. Whatever you do, whatever you want to do, New York is the best place to get those ideas and those feelings and that market in every industry. And this will take that central idea that started New York and grow it to a new and higher level than ever before. And that's what today is all about, and that's why we thank you for being here. Thank you, and God bless.
Before we introduce our next speaker, let me ask you to join us in welcoming Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer. We're in her borough, and the least we can do is say thanks for having us. We're going to continue with our program, and in a moment, have our first panel discussion for you this morning. I introduced him before, and the governor thanked him for his extensive service, his advice, his wise counsel over many, many months, particularly with the launch of the Startup New York program. John Mack is special advisor to the Board of Empire State Development, and he's special advisor, former chairman and CEO of Morgan Stanley. He's going to moderate our first panel and provide us with his overview of this very important opportunity for New York State. Ladies and gentlemen, please a warm welcome for John Mack.
Before we introduce the panel, matter of fact, when we have the panel come up just in a second, I want to tell you why I took this job on to help the governor. Number one, I really like to be kidded. I enjoy sense of humor. So right before I came up, Andrew said, "Don't blow it." He said, "I'm trying to get you nervous." Well, I'm not nervous. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be involved. And when I was a young kid, back in the 50s, I grew up in North Carolina. And in North Carolina, 1954, 1955, somewhere in there, the governor of the state of North Carolina said, we have land right between, or right among, three great universities, Duke University, North Carolina State, and the University of North Carolina. Let's create a research triangle where we will give huge tax breaks for industry to set up and do their research, and outside of the triangle, they could do manufacturing. If you go back and look what's happened over the number of years that's been in place, and look about the crisis we went through in 2008 during the meltdown, property values and job creation in North Carolina around that triangle didn't budge. It's because that governor had the foresight to create an economic zone that worked for the state and worked for the people and worked for the companies. So one of the main reasons I took this on, I think Andrew Cuomo has that same vision. And I think what he's doing really requires us to get involved and help build in this great state the opportunity to create jobs, to manufacture, to be a leader, and also be a leader in developing technology and science that we can all benefit from. So with that, let me introduce the panel. First, we're going to start with Steve Hendy, Brooklyn Brewery president and co-founder. Steve, if you would come up here. He's already told me no free beer. Tom Caulfield, Global Foundries. That last step, right? Yeah. Dr. Alon Kalorius, he is the CEO of SUNY Polytech Institute. And Kathy Alfano, who's Senior Director of Economic Development for Frito-Lay. So one of the things that I'd like to ask you, if each of you would take a few minutes to talk about what attracted you to New York and what has the environment been since you've built your businesses in New York, and what are the opportunities you see going forward? So Steve, let's start with you, then we'll go down the line.
Well, John, I was a journalist in the first 15 years of my life, so New York is the communications center of the world, and I gravitated to New York and eventually went to the Middle East for Associated Press in the early 80s. I covered a lot of big stories, wars in Lebanon and Syria and Iran and Iraq. I was sitting behind President Sadat when he was killed in Cairo. But when I was there, I met American diplomats who worked in Saudi Arabia, where they have Islamic law, no alcoholic beverages. These guys all made their own beer at home. And I got into making my own beer. And then my wife got fed up with being the wife of a war correspondent. We came back to New York. I was making beer at home, working for a newspaper, kind of bored in an editor's job. So together with my downstairs neighbor, we started Brooklyn Brewery, hoping to tie into the great history of brewing in Brooklyn.
And what year was that you started?
1988 is when we sold our first beer. So it's been 26 years. And we now sell in half the country, 25 states, and export to more than 25 countries around the world.
Congratulations. Well done. Tom?
It's a hard act to follow. So a little bit about Global Foundries. We make semiconductors, chips, and by and large, they go into the mobile devices that we all use in our daily lives. We're the number 2 semiconductor foundry in the world, number 1 in the country. And we are right here in Malta, New York, about 3 hours north of here. I think New York has 3 thrusts for why a company like Global Foundries would locate here. And it comes in incentives, education, and in R&D. Like many companies, even breweries, right, we compete globally. And so incentive programs, as the governor was talking about before, have to be competitive globally. It's not about one state versus the other. These incentive programs have to allow companies like ours to compete globally. The second is to compete globally, you need talented individuals. You need, especially in the STEM field, scientists, engineers, mathematicians. And the university, both the private and public education system in New York State is bar none one of the top in the country. So we have the talented workforce. And then the hub for innovation has to be R&D. It would be almost impossible for a company like Global Foundries to put a manufacturing facility in the middle of a place where there isn't innovation. And so the CNSC in Albany, the most advanced R&D facility for semiconductors, is yet just 22 miles away from where we are. It provides an infrastructure for partnership and R&D. It provides a talent base. It provides actually where we can move early commercialization of technology that much faster. In fact, I think that's our competitive weapon, is that we're 22 miles from the leading edge semiconductor development center in the world, and we get to drive that collaboration faster than our competitors that also participate in that facility.
So Tom, you're sitting right beside Alan, who's professor of science, and I would think things he has worked on, developed, and access to those innovations, is that used in any of your businesses? Do you collaborate?
Absolutely. We run an R&D program in collaboration with Elaine's facility. These wafers that we build our product on, some of that R&D work we actually do in CNC. We've been a part of the JDA joint development for the 4 years since we've existed as a company, and before that, our parent company, AMD.
All right. Alan, why don't you talk a little bit about your background, then also, if you don't mind, speak a little bit about the cooperation between you and Foundries.
Well, actually, after Tom's comments, I can't do better, so that concludes my comments.
I know you're kidding, you're a professor.
CNSC, as you know, is one of the colleges at SUNY Polytechnic Institute, and we have a great partner with Global Foundries. But when I finished my PhD in physics in 1988, I probably was 7 or 8 then, I was looking to interview for jobs, and I was interested in an academic environment. And of all the places, of all the job offers I got, the one that got my attention the most was State University of New York under a governor by the name of Mario Cuomo. Why? He had at the time created the SUNY Graduate Research Initiative to basically attract talent, to innovate, do research, and also a program by the name of the Center for Advanced Technologies at the time, which was the first and the only one of its kind at the time, which would give each university $1 million a year as long as the innovation is relevant to industry. And the university has to generate at least $1 million of an industry match to make sure it's relevant. And those two programs, and the fact that the governor himself was involved in the interview process, it was an amazing experience to be sitting with the governor asking you about your plans for the future, about what kind of innovation you're interested in. And that was the catalyst for not me only taking the job and getting questions at the time, where is Albany, New York, to, building the partnerships, including the one now we have with Global Foundries. I mean, for us, Global Foundries is, for lack of a better word, the poster child of what a high-tech company should be, the type of relationship, the type of coupling we have with them in terms of not only Global Foundries researchers are located at CNSC, which is unique to New York, this co-location model, having researchers from companies be on site at the universities, to doing joint educational programs, to GF being a great citizen in terms of helping attract other companies. Tom is modest because one thing he didn't mention is before he joined Global Foundries as Senior Vice President, he was also running a company by the name of Sora, an LED company, which at the time we negotiated a deal of having them move to New York last year. And one of the founders this morning won the Nobel laureate in physics.
Wow.
So Tom might be next. But that's, in a nutshell, how could you not come to a state where the leadership of the state is interested in creating the hub, in creating the innovation and attracting skill set, and personally involved in driving it?
Sure. Thank you. Best for last. Kathy?
Okay, so I work for PepsiCo, and our experience is we have a very rich history with New York State. We have a Frito-Lay plant, a Pepsi plant. We have our global headquarters as well as our bottling headquarters, and we have various DCs. So over 6,000 employees in the state. But the new project that I really think is the one that people want me to talk about is what attracted the new yogurt factory to New York. And really, what was very interesting is it was the best business case. So when we made the decision to open up the factory in Batavia, New York, it was because we had very good land with utilities, so it was shovel ready. We had a good workforce. We do a whole lot of analysis on workforce. The taxes, as Governor Cuomo mentioned, there's sales tax, there's property tax, and there's income tax. What people don't realize is in New York State, there's no property tax on manufacturing equipment. That's a very big difference from states that are adjacent to us, not to be mentioned. And then there's also the incentives. And so, again, for us, it became the best business case. We had the raw materials, the milk, and all the key ingredients to really choose Batavia for our yogurt factory.
For all four of you, when you look back on the state, and you've all built businesses here, what changes have you seen in the last few years vis-a-vis where the state would have been if you were here 15 or 20 years ago? I mean, my impression is it's much more of a partnership, but you're running businesses and you see it. Any comment on that?
I can comment on that, John. I think Governor Cuomo recognized that small breweries were popping up all over the state the same way small wineries did, 30 years ago, and small distilleries as well. And he seized that and said, how can we help these companies grow? So we expanded our brewery in Brooklyn a couple of years ago. We got state aid for that. We've always had support from ag and markets in trade shows around the world, which have helped us make connections around the world. There have been sweeping changes to the regulations governing brewery operations in New York State, very favorable to small breweries. And lastly, there's a new farm breweries law which connects the breweries to the farming communities in New York State. So New York farmers are growing hops again. New York used to be a major hop growing state back 50 years ago. They're growing hops again. They're growing grain again. We have a beer called Green Market Wheat Beer, which is made with more than 70% New York state-grown wheat and also hops. So those are the kind of opportunities that we've seized on that have been facilitated by the state government.
Thank you. Kathy, if you go to Pepsi and you look at how broad it is and a big presence in Texas, you operate in Texas, you're operating here and expanding. What do you see as the differences? And in your new facility in yogurt, clearly you need access to the commodity milk, but you also need a lot more. Talk a little bit about that.
About why we chose New York
Yes.
for the yogurt factory? Okay, so so when we have a whole team, and I was actually on the team that searched for the location, and it's a modeling tool, and it's a logistical modeling tool. Where are your customers? And so you kind of put a point in the map on where are your customers, and then the next is where is your raw materials, and then you kind of logistically figure out where is the key location to find the plant. And so we had a geographic area of about 200 miles, right? And so there were competing states, but I think that when we went and looked at New York, it was so impressive with the website and the collaboration that we had with the regional economic development agencies. On the site search, they came and brought us all the information that we needed. We needed information on utilities, water, sewer, electricity, and it was all available. And that's part of the Governor's Shovel Ready program. So the fact that we could build immediately and have all of our utilities was also important. But on the tax side and the incentive side, that was also a win-win for us to select that location as well.
Kathy, one of the things you said to me before we came on about there are other states, Texas being one of them, talks about no taxes, but there are other taxes. Talk just a little bit about on your equipment and how you're charged for that in these other states
Right.
versus here in New York.
Right, so for manufacturing, so I actually am a CPA, but I'm not giving you tax advice. But so on manufacturing equipment in the state of Texas, you will be charged about 2% of your capital investment in property tax. But in New York State, they do not charge you property tax on your manufacturing equipment. You are just charged on your real estate. And then on the sales tax side, you are charged sales tax in some states on manufacturing equipment, but not in New York State. And to the extent that you do pay sales tax in New York State, it's on raw materials for a building. There is incentives to really minimize that. So I really think that is a great benefit that New York has. I do this work for PepsiCo in all the states, and I would say that New York is a very top-tier type of organization that offers benefits on various platforms.
Okay, thank you. For Alan, for Tom, I've been very active on the West Coast, mainly in venture. And I meet these entrepreneurs who are building everything from hardware to software, et cetera. And I've said to them, you know, and I'm on a couple boards there, one of the issues, they're hiring engineers from each other. It kind of spirals up in the price. New York produces a great number of engineers out of our schools. What do you think we need to do to get more focus and bring some of those startups and some existing jobs here? And one of the entrepreneurs I spoke with, he said, look, John, I go to India for engineers because that's where they are. I need engineers. So when we started chatting, I said, well, we produce not only high-quality engineers, you don't have to get a passport to come to New York. And the thing that surprised me, something I would have never thought of, he said, if you can give me one flight a day, San Francisco or San Jose, to Albany, Buffalo, or Rochester, over time we can build our businesses here. Can you make some comments on that or your thoughts on it?
Well, let's start with the first part of that. When you talk about labor, it has to be skilled at all levels. Right? It's not just PhDs and engineers. There's technical skills. And I think one of the things the state has done a really good job of with partnership between the Chancellor of SUNY and is to change a programmatic approach to education to be, I'll call it demand-driven, to make sure the curriculum is transforming to be representative to the types of jobs that are needed. So, yeah, you could go elsewhere in the world, but you want to make sure you have the right skills here on the ground. So I think you need to start with that as a basis. Better transportation, meaning better flights. I'd love one from New York City to Albany, if you can get that for me, let alone California. No, I think there's a unique opportunity here. I mean, let me go back, give a little bit more on Global Foundries. When we committed to come here 4 years ago, you know, our plan, our vision was to create 1,200 jobs and invest $4 billion in capital equipment, right? The same incentives that we were just speaking about. As we look forward today, what's already in the ground and what's going in the ground, we'll do 3 to 4 times that amount of capital investment, 3 to 4 times that in jobs directly with Global Foundry badges. Those jobs are skilled jobs. The average salary is $90K a year. The number of, I call it the halo effect around our facility in indirect jobs is 15,000. The construction over 6 years, 3,500 contractors a day go around the side of our facility, riggers, pipe fitters, electricians. The amount of economic impact for a little program that started 4 years ago is incredible. So I think the things we need to do to attract entrepreneurs is to attract businesses. Do it as the model states here. Build these regions around universities, so you have the technical core, and then attract the manufacturing facilities to leverage those. Right? And having, you know, transportation that's a little bit more convenient than a flight a day, I'll sign up for that program.
Well, you know, I'd like to address the first half, if I may. You asked a question about what has changed the last few years. And as you might imagine, we travel globally. We work with 3,500 companies across the globe. And I can tell you the thing across talking to every one of those executive CEOs, the environment in the state, the spirit, the leadership. I mean, with Governor Andrew Cuomo, you have a creativity, a flexibility, a drive, an ambition to make New York #1. And with all that happened the last 4 years, there is such level of trust now, such confidence that those companies want to come to New York. And I have 2 data points that I think are relevant there. One, Louis Black, who's the comedian you know, until Governor Andrew Cuomo was elected, every time he came to Albany and gave his thing at the Palace Theater, he would start by making fun of the government in New York. I'm not kidding. He would start by saying, oh, did you read this about this governor and that? The last 4 years, every time he comes to the palace, the first line is, your government is working great, guys, so I'm going to make fun of the federal government. The second one, which is data point interesting to me, I find it very interesting now that the governor of Texas spends more time in New York than he does in Texas. I mean, he's here every week. We might as well give him the citizenship. And in terms of education, also it's about leadership. What Chancellor Nancy Zimpher has done with SUNY is readapting SUNY, creating it, making it more embedded with the communities. Look at the entire, I mean, every day she talks, she reminds us, she pushes us to create the entire educational ecosystem, as Tom pointed out. And under her leadership, there's the first new creative campus, interregional, in the last 50, 60 years within SUNY, which is SUNY Polytechnic Institute, with 2 campuses, one in Utica, one in Albany, driving all sorts of engineering and science feed to all the companies.
Thank you. Before, I want to thank the panel. Before we step down, when I was sitting beside Alan on the front row, he's going through one of the brochures, and he said, well, that's incorrect. We're no longer #2, we're #1. Why don't you make a comment on that? You know,
in the brochure it says we're #2 in academic research and development investment in the US. That is not correct. We're now #1 because the data there does not account for the billions of dollars that New York State actually is investing in academic research and development. So, you know, we don't have to be the smartest. We're #1 in the US now.
So we also exhibit in the state of New York truth in advertising. So we're #1. I want to thank the panel. Thank you very much, and thanks for having us here. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, John. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Dr. Kalayaris, for correcting. We will never do another ESD brochure without running a copy past you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short break, enjoy some coffee and refreshments. We'll reconvene about half an hour and begin our 2 second panels here and in another room. Thanks very much.